the things that you're going to have on your take-home quiz is combination questions involving cards. And so I am going to show you how you can count the chances of certain poker hands happening, and it will explain why in the game of poker some hands are better than others. Well, the reason for that is because they're more rare. But now we'll be able to count that to figure that out. Now there's a couple of general strategies which we'll write out, and after we write them out, they might make little to no sense at the beginning. And you'll have to see how does that work within questions, and then the wording will make sense. Okay? General strategy number 1. Choose kinds of the same size at the same time. So when we talk about kinds, in poker, one hand is called 3 of a kind. That means you have 3 of the same card, right? If you have 2 of a kind, you have 2 cards that are the same, and 3 single cards that go with it that are different, okay? What this means is when you would choose those 3 single cards, those 3 single cards are the same size. They're all the same, they're all 1 card each. You have to choose them at the same time. We'll see what that means. We're going to choose the kind first. Then specific cards or the suits next. So what does this look like? Okay. We can start off with a very simple hand, which is a pair. And an example of a pair would be having 2 cards. So maybe I have the king of clubs and the king of spades, and then 3 cards that are different. So if you were playing poker and you had this hand, this would be considered a pair because you have 2 kings and 3 different cards. Our question is, in playing the game of poker, we already found out that there was 2.6 million different hands possible. 52 choose 5. How many of them have a pair? Should you be really excited when you have a pair, or is it kind of like okay but not great? We're going to figure that out. Okay? So first of all, the pair is 2 cards. And that's the only 2 cards that we have. The others are singles. So we choose the kind first. There are 13 kinds, ace through king, right? Ace to 10 is 10 numbers. And then jack, queen, king. There are 13 kinds in each suit. So we have to do 13 choose 1, because our pair could be anything. It could be kings, a pair of 5s, a pair of 3s, a pair of aces. So it could be anything. So this first says, I'm going to choose 1 kind. I happen to choose kings. How many kings are in the deck? First you choose the kind, then the specific cards or the suit. There are 4 kings in the deck. You need to choose which 2 make your pair. And this together makes a pair. Next, we have to have 3 single cards go with this. But they can't be a king, because then you wouldn't have just 2 kings, you'd have more kings. So we have 12 kinds left, and we need to choose 3 of them. The reason you have to choose kinds of the same size at the same time is is because when you get your deck, your hand, it doesn't matter the order. So combinations take out order. So 12 choose 3 means that having the 7, 5, and 3 is not different than a 3, 5, and 7. So 12 choose 3. I happen to choose 7s, 5s, and 3s. How many 7s are there in the deck? There's 4. I choose which one I'm going to have. There are 4 5s. I choose which one. There are 4 3s. I choose which one. And this together gives me 3 single cards. And this comes out to, there are just over 1 million different hands that have a pair. So a little bit less than 50% of hands have a pair. Which means if you have a pair, it's not necessarily that good of a poker hand. But of course it's better than having nothing. And of course the higher your pair is, like a pair of kings is pretty good, because it's higher than a pair of queens or jacks or 10. Next, well, what would happen if we counted 2 pairs? How much more unlikely is this? And with 2 pairs, you could have 7 of clubs and 7 of diamonds, and maybe the 8 of spades and the 8 of clubs. And your last card has to be something different. This is an example of having 2 pairs. So we notice that the pairs, these are the same size. So when we have our 13 kinds, we would choose 2. Because pair of 7s and pair of 8s is not different than pair of 8s and pair of 7s. So we have to choose the kinds of the same size at the same time. We choose our kinds first, then I have 4 7s, I choose which 2. I have 4 8s, I choose which 2. This would count 2 pairs. Now I'm going to follow the same rules. I need 1 other card, right? Okay? I'm perfectly fine if you go, okay, well, since it can't be 7s and 8s, I'd have to take out those 8 cards, leaving 44 cards left in the deck. I just have to choose 1. That would be perfectly fine. So you could just do 44, choose 1 for your last card. Or if you want to do kinds and then specific cards, how many kinds do you have left? 11. Choose 1 of them. I chose 8. How many aces are there? There's 4. Choose 1 of them. That's going to be 11 times 4. It's still going to be the same as 44. Choose 1. This is going to be a single card. And if we count this out on our calculator, how much better is it to have, look at that. You get that second pair, it's like 10 times better than a single pair. Much more rare, so you should be a little bit more excited about your hand, because chances are you're going to beat a lot of hands when you see that you have 2 pairs. And one of the things that, especially when you're starting poker, or you're playing the game for the first time, sometimes you don't know which hand beat which hand. And sometimes it's obvious. Like 3 of a kind probably is more rare than 2 of a kind. That should be an obvious kind of common sense thing. But is it harder to get 3 of a kind? Or is it harder to get 2 pairs? Right? 3 of a kind, an example of 3 of a kind says I have the 5 of clubs, I have the 5 of diamonds, and I have the 5 of spades, and then my other 2 cards are different. That would be 3 of a kind. Is that more rare than 2 pair? Right? And this is one that is like, well, how do you know? Like the 2 pair needs 4 cards to be right, whereas 3 of a kind only needs 3 cards to be right. But the 3 cards to be right all have to be the same. That seems harder than getting a pair. Well, let's count this out to find out. So now I have 13 kinds. I need to choose 1 to be my 3 of a kind. I chose 5s. There's 4 5s in the deck. I choose 3 of them. That's my 3 of a kind. Then I need 2 other cards. They're the same size. They're both singles, so they have to be chosen at the same time. I'll choose 2. I chose 3s. There's 4 3s in the deck. Choose which specific one. There are 4 kings in the deck. Choose which specific one. And this will count 2 single cards. Multiplying this out, you get 54,912. Compared to the 123,000 for 2 pairs. So now, mathematically, we can show why 3 of a kind in the game of poker is better than 2 pair. Now comes the question. When they were inventing the game, did they know the math? Or did they just play it enough times to say, hey, wait a minute, I've not seen these 3 of a kind very often. It must be better than 2 pair. Did they just do it from experiment and get a sense that this is rare? Or did they actually do the mathematics and count it? Not sure. Right? Sometimes you find out things are really rare just because you're like, that's never happened before. That must be rare. Okay, so you could do 4 of a kind. You could do a full house. You could count different ones using this same strategy. I just wanted to introduce this strategy to you. And I have a couple of questions on the quiz, but sometimes they're a little bit different. These ones are general, right? Sometimes I might ask, what are the chances of getting 2 aces? Then you wouldn't have to do the 13 choose 1 part. If you know it's an ace, the kind is 1 choose 1. I want aces. I know it's aces, so my kind is only 1 kind. And I would just have to do the 4 choose 2. So again, in this unit, every single question is different than a previous question. You have to read it, think about it, understand it in order to be able to solve it.